Hey, what's up guys and welcome back to Anime King. And today I'm going to be giving you part 6 of What If Naruto Became the Greatest Puppeteer. Remember to give this one to 300 likes as usual, share this to all of your friends in your social media platform, and also go ahead and check out the brand new episode of What If Naruto Unlock a Strange Power over an Anime King 2. And enjoy that guys. And I also post a new episode of What If Naruto's given a second chance on this channel. So go ahead and enjoy it as well guys. And remember, if you're new and this is the first time hearing my voice, and you enjoy the videos on both Anime King and Anime King 2, go ahead and click that red subscribe button and become part of the Anime King family. And thank you for all of your help and support. Remember to comment down below and tell me if you're new. I'll be replying talking about to all of you. So yeah, without further ado, what do you say begin this new episode? Begin the intro. So, the last spot we left off, it was the Chunin exam finals. As Jiraiya arrived, as he was speaking to Sarutobi, Jiraiya was looking for Naruto the entire time, but the kid stayed in his apartment like a hermit or something. And Jiraiya also broke in one time and the kid was in there, fast asleep. As Jiraiya came here to see what he was truly capable of after hearing puppets, they really wanted to see how Naruto was capable of, using, and how efficient he was in using puppets. As Sarutobi saw the Kazekage arrive as well. As the Kazekage sat down, as Sarutobi greeted him, the first match of the Chunin exam then went on, as Lee faced off against Sasuke. As Kakashi had arrived early, it seemed like soccer death had shaken out more than everyone thought. As Sasuke also seemed a bit different. As their battle began, Lee was moving with incredible speed, as he had to take off his weight after seeing that Sasuke was matching speed at front, as the both of them started to clash violently, as they were moving at blurs to most of the civilians who couldn't really see anything. As that was an impressive taijutsu battle, Lee opened up the gates, moving faster than Sasuke could even see. As Sasuke also dealt damage using Sharingan to his best of his ability, but Lee was just that much faster. As Lee stayed up for 5 more seconds than Sasuke, as that declared him the winner of the match after Sasuke passed out. The next match was Hinata vs Neji, as Hinata decided to show her growth. She showed her growth that she has made over time, as she spoke to Neji in a rather defiant manner, as she didn't want anyone to look down on her anymore. She wanted to be the right clan head that her father think that she can be, as she clashed with him, but Neji was still superior to her, and in the end, he brought her down, but she held back, because she could have struck him but she held back. It made Neji furious as he tried to attack her, but he did not hit and kill, as he was then stopped by the others as he was sent away. After that, Naruto match was next, as he faced off against Kankuro. As Naruto didn't even move from his position, Kankuro was using Karasu and he was hiding, as Kankuro pulled out his other puppet and captured Naruto within it, but he then heard a voice behind him. He was shocked, as Naruto was able to control 3 puppets now. He had used Dame and his 2 other female puppets, surprising Kankuro, as Naruto captured him and make his puppets swallow him, as Naruto was declared the winner of the match. As many from outside the village started to cheer as Naruto freed Kankuro and helped him even stand, because the things that he breathed in was bad. As Kankuro couldn't believe it, as Naruto found out that Kankuro had got these puppets from, Sasori. Sasori was the one that created these. He never made puppets of his own. How would you expect to learn how they work if you didn't make them of your own? Naruto thought to himself. Before anything else could go any further, Sarutobi asked Orochimaru if he's not going to drop these guys, as Orochimaru simply chuckled. As the invasion began, as Naruto smashed right into Gaara with a water blast from Raimiya. As Naruto has been planning to fight Gaara, so he was going to use everything on him that he has, as he told Genma that he will handle this. As Naruto pushed Gaara to the limit, even forced him to bring out Shikaku. As Naruto pulled a bunch of rubble together and attached them, as he then uses chakra threads, as he controlled the monster giant of a puppet that was made from rubble, which he smashed into Shikaku. As Naruto felt like he was going to run out of chakra, but that moment he felt something inside of him, as he felt a boost of chakra as his threads became orange in color. As he smashed right into Shikaku, he was able to blast Gaara right to the forehead, thinking that if he do that, the body might fall. And indeed it did, as Gaara collapsed down, breaking one of his legs. As Naruto collapsed exhausted, he didn't know what that rush of power was. But as he stepped forward to face Gaara, as Gaara was screaming, thinking that his existence was going to be erased. So yeah guys, so it's basically that's where we left off. You guys can switch across and please check out for yourself. So what do you say we begin this new episode? How did you beat me, said Gaara, as Naruto patted the puppet underneath him that was supporting him. High-powered water cannon, how else, he said, as he could feel his consciousness giving way because of his chakra exhaustion, but he held on. No, Gaara said. How did you beat the loneliness? You are like me. As Naruto narrowed his eyes. What do you mean I'm like you? Gaara didn't seem that he heard Naruto as he was apologizing to the same mother that he was talking to earlier and whimpering because of his leg. How did you? I live for me. I love only me. The boy was clearly insane, rambling to himself and clutching at his broken leg. But for some reason Naruto felt a pull to answer him. Who says I'm not lonely, said Naruto. For the first time Naruto noticed a dark ring around Gaara's eyes. They weren't any makeup like Kankuro. They were because of sleep deprivation. But I'm nothing like you. But then, Gaara struggled with his words. A long time ago I decided people wouldn't acknowledge me. Then I didn't need them, my own acknowledgement is enough. But it's never enough, no matter how hard I try to convince myself. So instead I decided to make others that had to acknowledge me, because I control them. Gaara nodded slowly, apparently something in there got through to him. You mean the puppets, he asked, as his own voice was getting weaker as he was slipping into unconsciousness. Sure, the puppet, said Naruto, as the both of them collapsed unconscious. Time skip 2 days after the invasion. Naruto woke up in the hospital. The official reason given to him was chakra exhaustion. But that was wrong. Naruto felt chakra depletion before, and he felt nothing like this. Everything ached as his vision went swimming when he rose too fast as well. It felt like he was trying to consume fire, only for the fire to incinerate his insides. All the same, he felt restless. He disliked hospitals, as the only prescription he was given was rest. He could rest at his house, surrounded by the thing that he loved, puppets. Unfortunately, his aching body didn't allow him to leave, so he just lay there alone in the quiet. As he couldn't contact his spy necro right now to find out what was going on, as he couldn't get any information from the nurses or the people that was walking around. But it didn't happen as the Hokage popped his head around the door. It was a welcome break from being alone in this bed. Hokage-sama, Naruto said, greeting him politely. Naruto-kun, I hope your recuperation is going well. I'm not disturbing your rest, am I? He says he sit down. As Naruto shook his head no, as he then sit up. I could ask the same of you, Hokage-sama. If I understand correctly, you were injured in the invasion by Orochimaru the Sannin, no less. Okay, so he wasn't completely cut off from the information around him. He had his way to receive, well, listening on chats and rumors from nurses going on around him. As Sarutobi simply chuckled. I suppose then, in the same regards we're the same, said Sarutobi. You are quite well informed then, Naruto-kun, he said. I overheard the nurse talkings. It's mostly all type of chatter, but if you know what to listen for, you will get the kind of information you want. Well, there is no need to worry then. One of the other Saiyans were there with me, and together, we were able to drive off my old student. As Naruto saw the man seem quite troubled as he spoke, as he tried to hide it. This seems like an odd visit, Hokage-sama. I would have thought after the invasion, the village would need your leadership. Not to mention the fact that I'm not exactly dressed for guests. As Naruto motioned, realizing that he was just dressed in a, well, gown, hospital gown. You would be quite right, the Hokage said that chuckle. But if I was forced to the point to work where I couldn't even visit one of my wounded chunin that did so much for the village, then I would be quite afraid that the workload would have driven me mad a long time ago. As Naruto heard exactly what he heard, Chunin, Hokage-sama, he said. As Sarutobi simply smiled. Nothing get past you, does it, Naruto-kun, he said. Yes, despite the turmoil in the aftermath of the invasion, the village does not forget its Genins. Given your performance in the exam and in the invasion, it has decided that the promotion suits you. As Sarutobi placed a jacket right on the bed beside Naruto. As he ran his fingers on the jacket, as it was a symbol of progression and growth for Naruto, as he was happy. Don't worry, it tends to be a lot to take in at first, but I assume by this that it means that you accept, said Sarutobi. Yeah, thank you, Hokage-sama, said Naruto. The old man simply nodded, as he was still wearing that smile as he stood up. Well, in any case, I have to be off. You weren't the only one to be promoted, you know. Then he was gone. Chunin, Naruto whispered to himself, his hand still going over the jacket. The mere thought of what the position meant was still taking a toll on his thoughts. Freedom. He was no longer under the watch of a Jonin, and he would be placed on a squad with Chunins of various sizes and even Jonins, as the mission saw fit. He could now also pick his missions, and with his specific set of skills, that would be wonderful. After all, the village only had one puppeteer. Freedom. Prestige. He could now access more of the village library because of his rank. And respect. He was no longer the lowest runt. He had seniority over all Genins, as his mind was going through the options, the choices, and the multiple paths to take. But then raised a question in his mind. Just what did he want to do? The answer was simple, wasn't it? His goal has never changed, to become the strongest puppeteer. Like Sasori, this was simply the first step forward, but for the first time ever though, Naruto was spoiled as he could choose and choose the direction he wanted to take, as a seed was just planted in a spiral. Deep right into the soil, would be branching out in all different directions. It was like Naruto's mind was unlocked and flown with information. Time skip. Something was plaguing Naruto's mind. War. War. It was so simple. And it would be, well, a good thing for him. War was something everyone used to rise in ranks, such as the Senju brothers, Uchiha Madara, the Sarutobi, even the Hanzo, the Salamander, the Sanins, the fourth Hokage, and even Kakashi got his moniker because of war. Sasori too. He was famous for bathing the sands of Kami no Kuni with the bloods of the sand enemies during the Third Great Shinobi War. Still, he couldn't just make war like that. But he was curious, how would one just go about orchestrating a war? But the first thing was, who would he want this war to be waged between? As he was sitting in his room, as he had a kunai as he was throwing it at the elemental nation map, the hidden stone, it was tempting. The relationship between the hidden stone and Konoha was shaky because of almost 3 generations of fighting and grudge. But any war started between these two nations would be drawn out and spill and get into other nations. So no, something a tad more controllable would be best. As he pulled another kunai and threw it as it hit on the map once again. The hidden sand. That would be easy, starting up a war with them, given their recent betrayal. But it was like picking on the weakest of the brunt. Right now, in manpower and everything, the Sand was the weakest village out of the 5 great nations. Any war would be swift and over too quickly to be of any use for him. After all, the end goal was not the war, but what the war could do for him. As he threw another kunai, Kumo, his interest got piqued as he leaned on his chair looking forward. There was certainly bad blood between the two nations, especially with Kumo trying to kidnap children with bloodlines. Hell, they nearly did a job a few years ago with the kidnapping of Hyuga. That had damn near sparked a war on its own. And their relationship right now was unstable. But it was because of the buffers, the land of spring, and the land of frost. They were between Konoha and Kumo, so it limited the interaction between the two nations, so it was like a buffer between them. But things were changing though, that uneasy, that peace. It was starting to change and things started to crack. As missions started to pass through 2 of the minor villages, going to Konoha and Kumo, as there had been some escalation between Kumo and Konoha and shinobis, but nothing too, well, drastic. As he was sure, given that if he didn't even do anything, war would be on the horizon. He looked up at his clock as he realized he has been sitting here for half an hour thinking. As he rubbed at his eyes, as he got up and swung the kunai in his fingers last one, as he tossed it behind him before looking back. He never noticed a thud as the kunai pierced the leaf marker where Konoha was located. The next few weeks fly past like a blur to Naruto. He was still taking missions and performing at his very best. He still worked on his puppets, designing and improving them. But his mind was also preoccupied elsewhere as well, as he wanted to learn something. He was focused on something when he went on a mission, as he saw a girl did hand signs and created clones. But they weren't ordinary clones. They were able to disrupt the ground when they moved. They were solid copies. As Naruto asked the man that was there, the Jonin, and the man told him about them, the shadow clone juice that was created by the second Hokage, as Naruto saw it, even though the man refused to teach him it. Talking about chakra drain, that didn't matter because Naruto saw the technique with his eyes and the hand signs she performed. As Naruto managed to learn the technique, it fascinated him. He could leave a clone for 6 days working. It would take 6 days for the chakra to run out before they disperse. As he understood why though, it was a migraine getting back all that information poured in your head at once. And he also learned, trying to learn 2 things at once was useless by having 2 clones read 1 book at the same time. And they dispersed, the information was all jumbled. Having them dispersed at least 20 minutes apart was enough time to give him the search through the memories. Then came the numbers. The girl was only able to create 3, but he could create at least 500 without any problem. He heard it was a draining jutsu, and that made Jonin struggle with at least 20 or so, but yet, he could create so much without feeling the backlash or hurt. And as far as he understood, a human was not able to split their chakra in so many ways without repercussions, as it brought up memories from his psyche from a long time ago, being called very unpleasant name by other children in the park, freak, weirdo. As these made him thought about his unusual chakra capacity. He had always known about it though. After children in the academy did what he did, they got exhausted but he was just a bit winded. But he always threw those thoughts away and just got back to what he was doing. But he remembered what Kara said. You are like me. You are like me. You are like me. Those words resonated in his mind as he remembered that strange orange chakra that came out of his, fingertips as the threads when he controlled that monster. The puppet that he created out of stones. What was that? Where did he get that boost from? Why, he thought to himself. It was frustrating him as he spun around in his chair. As he looked towards the mirror, he took a step back, nearly falling out of his chair because he saw something that nearly shocked him a minute ago. For a glimpse, a second, he could swear that he saw his eyes became slitted like an animal. He didn't understand. What the hell was that, he thought to himself. Time skip. Naruto came inside his apartment as he took off his jacket and threw it. Within that instant, a clone was able to catch it. They were rather handy to have around. It certainly made organizing the apartment quick and easy. As he slipped past 2 other clones and slumped down in his chair. Despite his exhaustion, he was smiling because it was finally complete. 3 months has passed since the end of Chunin exams and Konoha had been completely recovered. 3 months of missions back to back. Now he could finally get to some things that he truly wanted to work on. Combined with his funds from Nami and the mission that he has been going on, he could buy some things, some new things. Things that would make him never run out of puppet on the field. And also new puppets, new designs, ideas were just bursting inside his head. But on his wall, there was something, wires attached to wires with different writings and papers on it. It was a plan. That is what he and the clone call it. A plan that would start a war between Kumo and Konoha. To a normal person, it would just look like notices and maps, nothing more. But if you were well advanced, capable of reading between the lines, you could see the plan at full extent. He didn't know when it stopped being a mere thought in his mind, and it escalated into something bigger, something, dangerous. Time skip. Naruto jumped as a distant sound echoed through the trees, causing his companion, a man, rather jagged, with a dark skin, with a scar over his left eye to glare at him. Stop jumping at everything, you damn idiot. The older Jonin barked out commandingly, grew up and started acting like a damn Chunin. The rest of the squad had to suppress their laughter as they hold on to their mouth. Watching the 2 go back in front was the only entertainment they got out here, in the snow. Naruto, timid, and soft demeanor, clashed so much with their squad leader, who was a no-nonsense leader, as this was a group of Kumo ninjas. But Teiko, this time I swear I saw something in the trees, said Naruto. Oh sure, said Kei. Another one of the Kumo ninjas. He brushed past Naruto. I'm sure that it was one of those others, shadow people, right? Kei chuckled to himself as he walked on, his sandals crunching on the white snow. Or maybe it's a cicada monster you saw last week, coming back for his revenge. Oh scary. Another Kumo ninja said this one's a girl. Her name is Matsuke. As Naruto was shivering because he was scared, not because of the cold. Quiet down, you two. We need to keep constant vigilance out here, the captain said. This is the first line of defense for Kumo and you are the guardians. Start acting like it. Oh come on, Teiko. It's just a standard patrol along the border. These are pretty much the lamest missions we get as Chonins. Nothing ever happens out here. He got an evil look from the captain, but the captain simply turned and marched through the snow, making his way. I don't know, the girl said as she glanced back as she looked at Narui with a smile on her face. I heard that Konoha has gotten pretty active lately along this border. Maybe these shadows that Narui are seeing are their envoys and they're scouting out the border and ready to attack us. As she smirked as she walked along, waiting for Narui to scream or something and act like a coward. But there was nothing. So she turned back around. Narui? As he was gone. Narui, she said. Her head snapped around as she heard a muffled grunt from behind her. All she saw was Kay rubbing the back of his neck as he pulled a dart out of his skin and dropped it. Well, the moment he said that, he dropped as he collapsed over. The next moment, Kay's body was wrapped up by wires before pulled up in the trees. Before she could even move, something flying to her own neck. As she staggered, she pulled out the dart before it fell out of her hands as her vision started getting hasty when she saw someone landing right in front of her. Before she collapsed down. Well, that was close, the masked figure said that was in front of her, as he cracked his neck and looked up towards the trees for his, well, compatriots. Moments later, they joined him after dealing with the last target. Who was the smart guy that fired the dart while she was looking? One of them asked, as he pulled the mask from his face, as he gasped for breath. Damn. How does the envoys breathe in these things? The rest of them also removed their masks, showing a face of identicals, twins, as all of them look the same. Their spiky hair and their whiskered cheeks. They aren't real envoy masks, remember? A different Naruto said, as his eyes roam over the Kumo Chunin and their Jonin, squad leader. Who knows how those things work? Man, don't patronize me, the first clone said. It was my idea in the first place to make our own envoy uniform and mask, so we didn't have to steal them and risk Konoha noticing their absence. He cringed as another clone slapped him on the back of his head, light enough to not dispel him, but, well, hard enough to make him feel it. You idiot, it was a boss idea, the third one behind him said. We're just clones. Exactly, the first one said. I am a clone of him, so that in turn made it my idea. As the others sweat dropped. Would you two stop arguing? The last one behind them said. It makes the boss look crazy when we do this. They all shared a look before shrugging as they got on with their job. They will have to quickly deal with the Kumo squad, as the poison that they were injected with will slowly shut down their vital organs, but it will leave their actual bodies undamaged. So why did we kill all of them again? The first clone said, as the others sweat dropped once again. What? He asked. I'm just saying, if you want to ignite hostilities, wouldn't it be better to let one of them go to tell the others what happened? Why are you even asked? No one beside him said. We're all clones, so anything you know, we know. Oh, just humor him, the fourth one said, as he picked up Kay's body. He will never shut up otherwise. Hey, I can do without the sass, the first clone said. The third Naruto then picked up the Jonin. And we can do without you. We have to act like envoy if we want to be convincing. Envoys do not let target escape, the second one said. To get them back on track and to actually finish their mission. Anyway, we're only here to increase tensions. It will be far more effective if Kumo doesn't know who's targeting them. The more paranoid they get, the better. This appearance between the border that they share with Konoha would be just fine for that. At least that was the idea behind it, said the second clone. 4 clones would ambush Kumo, shinobis in their own territory, disguised as Konoha envoy. If they were unsuccessful in their attack, then Konoha would be blamed regardless, either through first-hand account of any survivors, or from the Kumo organization clone technique unique to the Leaf Village. But if the clones are successful, Kumo will notice that the patrol ninjas are slowly disappearing. And from Naruto reports that he got, the Hokage was a very fast man in every aspect. He was a man fast to anger and fast to jump to conclusions. This disappearance would be, well, forcing on him, and he would act in a rather rash way. The fast way that he is used to, without much brain, but just rushing in. But that was the simple part. Any Konoha ninja with access to the clone jutsu, with a grudge with Kumo, could simply pull this off. But Naruto knew that Naruto was a smart man. He would think that someone was using this to frame Konoha, but that was not the true genius behind his plan. He got this spark of intelligence after using Kane, his new puppet against Hinata. It had given him a tolerance to human puppeteering, using people for his puppets, as long as he was not the one personally involved himself in the process. With creating them, he could even see himself making more of them, if his puppets now proved to be inadequate. After all, he could be flexible for anything. Using this, he would create puppets out of the Kumo shinobis and use those squad to launch attack against the Konoha shinobis. But if the raids failed, he would simply make the Kumo puppets destroy themselves. Something that what Kumo shinobis do, so they wouldn't get captured, to risk the safety of their village if they get interrogated. The Konoha squad would see nothing but Kumo shinobis just attacking them. But Naruto had to go through a lot of lengths to make sure they didn't come up on a squad with a beer gun user, because that would put everything to hell. He was eager, not idiotic. The best part, Naruto didn't have to lift a finger. He would just have to create these clones and watch the events unfold right in front of his eyes. Right now, it was like playing a very large game of shogi, waiting and watching your opponent. Except the board was so large that he couldn't even see it. Time skip. Naruto got the information from the clones as a smile came on his face. As he took a sip of the tea, winter had arrived, and while the, land of fire was not all that snowy and all that, there was still a chill to the air. That was probably the reason why the shop that he was currently at was currently empty, as he was sitting down with his cup of tea. But Naruto was a big part of why the place was so empty, because chonins were being overworked, chonins like him, because there was a tension in the air right now, because of what he was doing. That annoyed attitude that the chonins and some of the jonis brought back with them when they came back from the border was going around the village, making people feel like war was around the corner. But for Naruto, it was, good, as he could look for more missions and quieter streets. Yes, everything was working over him in his favor. And now that he had the shell clone technique, overwork was no longer a word for him, as it had earned him a reputation. He looked like he could drop at any moment now, but he was the only one that can pull at 20 hours straight pull. And also, he has been rotated with so many squads, he probably met every single chunin that Konoha had in his force. He was never given a reason for his transfers, but he was always, moved. For like 3 missions after that, he was moved to another squad. It seems like he wasn't very liked. He didn't care about that. He simply achieved his goal. What the squad leader told him what to do, he did. Talking to others and really bonding with all of them. He didn't really care about any of that. Things like socializing wasn't on his priority right now. From the few times he had been on a squad with Sasuke and Hinata, it was strange because Sasuke seemed very different to how Naruto remember him. There was a new motivation behind the boy movements, and he seemed to be exhausted himself with training. He was determined on a whole nother level. As for why though, Naruto could not say. But none of that would matter very soon because Naruto has finally agreed that the tensions between Kumo and Konoha has reached a good point. The Hokage was out of the village for a discussion from a representative from Kami no Kuni, so now was the time to light the fuse. He's been preparing for this for a while now, so he knew exactly how to do it. Time skip. Hinata was moving through her move of her Jayugan stance, as get promoted to Chunin was something good for her, although it brought more difficult work for her. But she saw a rare smile on her father's face when she got promoted, as she felt some weights lifted off her shoulders. So she had to just work and get insanely stronger right now, so she could make him proud. As she caught sight of something with her Byakugan. "You can come out, Naruto-kun," she said, as a smile came on her face, a gentle smile. "Huh, you caught me," said Naruto as he came out with a smile. "As much as I dislike our clan's motto, Naruto-kun, these eyes really do see a lot." She chuckled and then turned away with a small blush. "I'm sure they do," he said. "I've decided to come over and, ask you for a friendly spar, or first as Chunin," said Naruto. He didn't mention the fact that he's been sparring with all of his clones. Someone other than himself. That sounds wonderful," she said. It wasn't her ideal way of spending time with him, but she would take whatever she can get. "Would you be using cane?" she asked, as Naruto smirked at her. "Actually, I was thinking a more open spar. No holds bar," as she got a worried look on her face. "No, don't worry, nothing too intense," he said. "But you might be aware of some traps. After all, that is how I fight," he said. Feeling more confident, she nodded, as Naruto smiled at her, making her blush even more. Shall we start then?" she asked, as she looked back up, but he was gone. "Hinata, you should know by now," his voice echoed all around. "We started the moment I walked in the clearing." Time skip. They're brief. Spars are not a one-time thing either, as Hinata sometimes came to him, asking to spar as well, as he could see that she was getting more confident with each spar. And she was more talkative, going to great lengths on her family situation, her concerns over her little sister, her father ever watchful eye, and just some observation. It was fine by Naruto though. The more she taught, the more he learned, and she never pried into his own life. He would offer up some point or counter a point, or even talk about their shinobi life or something like that. And she talked, most on her clan, and he simply absorbed all of that information as his fascination with the Byakugan has grown. Just think of a puppeteer who could see for miles upon miles. That was just immense. And with every spar, Naruto was able to understand the dojutsu a bit better, slowly picking it apart and discover more each day. Flashback. Naruto watched curiously through the eyes of one of his small animal puppets as he watched Hinata training. He had been there sitting on the ground through the use of the subterranean voyage technique for about 20 minutes, and Hinata had her Byakugan activated, but she didn't show that she had actually seen him. Recently, he has tried to enter her training ground in many ways to surprise Hinata. She apparently found something charming in it, as she made that game to try and find him every time they entered the training ground, as Naruto decided to go a bit higher up into the ground. As he saw a smirk on Hinata's face. "I see you, Naruto-kun," she said. With a smile, he came from the ground, as he just smiled at her, as all that information was being stored away in his mind. And one day, sparring with Hinata, he found something very curious. Something very shocking. The Hyuga blind spot. End of flashback. It was time for Naruto to begin his little plan. As Naruto was currently keeping a close eye on Neji, ever since watching him tear down Hinata and beating her, Naruto felt something stirring inside him looking at Neji. So he wanted to get rid of that stir inside of him. But he was going to do that now, killing two birds with one stone. So he planned, he watched, and he waited as he learned Neji's habits and memorized his schedule. Every Tuesday morning, Neji was forced to rise before dawn, or his sensei and his miniature clone would be there to wake him up a few laps around the village. So instead, he went for a walk before they arrived and relaxed in the clearing. Just as Neji passed an invisible boundary, Naruto's finger twitched a bit. Deep in the forest, the Senbon was released without even a whisper. Naruto was sure even if Neji had his Byakugan activated, he wouldn't see the tiny weapon coming unless it was too late. The moment that happened, the thin weapon stabbed right into his neck, as the poison quickly rushed into him. Before he even hit the ground, 10 invisible strings attached to his body. "Jutsu," said Naruto. This was his first time to try out one of his techniques that he's been working on. He has never tried on a human's body before. Neji did not fall, he stood right up, like he never fell unconscious. His eyes were still closed though, and his movements were a bit sluggish, but he was standing upright and moving. Naruto's threads had connected the 10 tenketsu across Neji's body that attached to his chakra system to move him. If they were conscious, they could resist this and break free. But Neji didn't have any saying at the moment. As Naruto walked Neji to his training ground, from there was all a matter of building a scene. As he unsealed the corpse of a Kumo shinobi that one of his clones had brought back from the border. Then he went about orchestrating a fight between the both of them, as he felt like a real puppet master. After sparring with Hinata so much, he knew how a Byakugan user fight after seeing her use a giant stance. As he made a sculpt on the grounds, replicating this through Neji movements. Spending that time with Hinata was a good thing after all. He even forced the Kumo shinobi to use some lightning techniques, leaving scorch marks on trees and on the ground. But in the end, Neji lost as he was knocked out and pulled away by the Kumo shinobi. It was perfect. Tension was at the highest, and this was just the trigger that was needed to set off everything. It wasn't unthinkable to think that Kumo might try to get another Byakugan user, this time aiming a bit lower than the head of the clan and going for someone who is, well, a branch member. But something didn't happen. Neji-san, as a female voice called out. A moment later, as a young girl that Hinata, well, described to Naruto as Hanabi, walked out. As the curiosity on her face was replaced by a horror when she saw Naruto Neji's body sling over his shoulder. After what looked like an intense fight. "Crap," Naruto said. This was not according to plan. Time skip as Hanabi slowly opened her eyes. Her throat felt dry. She reached over towards her nightstand as her hand gripped a glass of water. Her nightstand felt, well, lower than usual as she sipped the water, as it felt so refreshing. Sorry about the headache. She froze as she dropped the glass as it landed on the carpet with a thud. It should wear off in a few. As she slowly turned her head to see a boy about her sister's age with spiky blonde hair, as he was wearing a hood, the spiky blonde hair that came down his face. As he was sitting down in what she realized was not the Hyuga compound. Everything then hit her as she realized what happened. She had been with her caretaker, Keo, for an early morning walk. Keo thought that it was because she loved the quiet morning, but it was because she loved to watch Neji train. She had always looked up to her older cousin, seeing him as a role model, not her timid sister. As a second born, it was a very real possibility that Hanabi should be brand new the Birdcage seal, as her uncle had been. She had looked up to Neji because of his strength of will, fighting against that crushing fate, to become stronger. She wanted that same strength, so she went to watch him train, if only to understand how he was able to accomplish so much on his own. But she could not be seen mingling the Branch family, not when she was still unbranded, and it took a lot to get out of Keo's sight. This time, she told him that she lost her hair tie. But what she came upon when Keo went off to get her hair tie was not her cousin's training, but a scene that surprised her. The aftermath of an intense and dangerous fight, and in the middle of it, it was... Sorry, am I interrupting something? Said Naruto. As she recognized this boy, he was a puppeteer from Chunin exams, although his name escaped her. She realized while thinking she was staring at the boy with wide eyes. What is going on? She said. What am I doing here? And what did you do with Neji? She refused to meet near the eyes, she just looked at him, but not in his eyes. She didn't know why either, but those eyes that he was looking at her with, it seems like she was not important. Like she didn't matter at all in this situation. Like he had some strange big plan and she was just a pesky fly. But that was impossible. No one should look down at her like that. She was a Hyuga. As she moved forward and tried to attack him, but she froze. Now, there was no need for that. As she then looked at her wrist to see, too, thin lines of chakra. She could only see them because she had activated her Byakugan in her attack, because she couldn't see them earlier. I thought, as a Hyuga, we could have a good conversation before we start with anything brawless or power. But I suppose human nature is human nature, despite how we try to disguise it. A quick thud, and she was pulled back as she sat back on the futon, as her hands were suspended above her head. It wasn't painful, but it was uncomfortable. My name is Naruto, by the way, as that jogged her memory of his impressive performance that he pulled off. She didn't remember her sister telling her about Naruto helping her train to beat Neji. At the time, she thought that it was impossible. But after seeing Hinata come so close to beat their, well, prodigy cousin though, she had to change her view a bit. And what could we have to talk about? She said. She looked up, glaring at him. If she was to be captured, then she would not be some weak little hostage. Her pride would not allow it. You are my kidnapper, I have nothing to say to you. Naruto raised the eyebrow. Oh, okay, he said, as he turned around in his chair, as he continued his work he was working on before she woke up. She blinked. He just dismissed her that easily. Yes, she said, I won't tell you anything, no matter how hard you try. She looked up smugly. She would not tell him a thing. Okay, he said. It yet again shocked her how casual he was being and not caring. What did he want? After all, she said, if you kept me alive, there must be some reason, because otherwise, you'd have simply taken my eyes and dumped my body somewhere. Am I right? Nope, said Naruto. What? She was surprised. What do you mean, nope? She said. As her cheeks became red, she was getting quite angry how he was dismissing her. He simply shrugged. I mean, nope. There is no greater meaning behind your capture. No secret that you have that I need to possess. No part of your body that I need to study. You have nothing I want. It was an accident, a flaw that I did not account for. A variable out of my control. It was a mistake, he said, as he continued to work. At that, she flinched a little. There was so little emotion in his voice, she believed him. But, I'm the Hyuga here, she said, as he simply shrugged once more. For as long as you don't get a tattoo on your forehead that you Hyugas are so fond of, he said, making her twitch. I know the secrets of the Hyuga style, she said. Naruto waved his hand as a puppet jumped off the wall. Strings attached to it as he made the puppet run through a Hyugan strike, testing, surprising the hell out of her. There were strikes that she didn't even know, but she saw her father practice in it. I could be used as a bargaining tool for money, or you can use me to get secrets from the clan, she said, as he turned towards her with a raised eyebrow. I'm sorry, but could it be that you want to be a hostage? He asked with a smirk. She glared at him. She didn't like this at all. She had to deal with her own uncertainty through her entire life, being the second born. And now he was dismissing her with so much ease, at least he was now looking at her. He then chuckled as he flicked his fingers. Her restraints vanished as he then turned back around. Caught off guard, she fell down as she picked herself up. So what then? She asked. I have to stay here because you made a mistake? You don't need me, not even my Byakugan. But he said nothing. So if I'm so useless to you and you won't let me leave, Why keep me alive, she asked. He placed a finger to his mouth. Shh, he said, as he looked back down to his work. As she was still restrained even though her hands were free. Whatever, she said, she huffed and turned back around, lying on the futon. Her hair was messy and coming down to her face, as she was happy for that because he couldn't see her tears. As she ended up falling asleep somehow. As Naruto started cursing his mind, he noticed that she was asleep. Flashback. Earlier. Damn it, damn it, damn it, Naruto, as he drove his fist into the wall beside him. Damn it, he cursed as he cried out, throwing a scroll over the room, as he looked at the unconscious form of Hanabi on the futon that he had dragged in from one of the other rooms. As he couldn't believe it, she has never come to watch Neji train before. She was never there before. Why now? Why the hell now? As he watched her eye twitch, she must be having a dream or something. Her eyes, that were not hampered or tampered with by any seal to prevent their extraction. The same seal that was the cause for Neji still being alive. As he was safely stored in a scroll that would keep his body preserved for a long period of time. As if he tried to take his Byakugan, they would simply be destroyed because of the bird, Kate Seal. As Naruto saw her start to stir, as he grabbed a needle, he didn't move forward as he rolled up her sleeve. He then saw bruises on her arms. These were not the bruises of training oneself either. The angles were wrong. This was from a brutal sparring partner. As Naruto was, well, not a caring person but using such brutal methods on a child. He remembered his treatment as a kid, the glares, the hatred, looks, the disgust that drove him into this life of being alone. His hand quivered for just a moment as he moved the needle away from her skin. For all the times for his consciousness to make its appearance. Why now when one of his goals were right in front of him? Another sigh escaped him. Things in his life could never be easy for once, right? He would just have to let things run their course from now on. As he looked up at the apartment, he was going to have to make a few adjustments. End of flashback. This time when Hanami woke up, the headache was gone. But it was still night though. Well, she couldn't tell because the blinds were drawn. As she saw lights from outside. But she couldn't tell if it was street lights or what. As she moved, as a paper fell off her stomach. It was a note from Naruto. Out. Back soon. Don't try to escape, Naruto. That was all that it said. She scoffed as she moved towards the window. As she ignored it, ignored all the puppets that were looking at her. As she reached for a string to draw back the blinds. She was shocked as she cried out as what felt like a few hundreds of volts of electricity ran up her arm, forcing it back. As she activated her Byakugan and looked at the string that she pulled. As there was strange ceiling complex all over it. The blinds and the windows were also scribbled on. As she saw every other exit was blocked off. As she saw one of the doors were not, well, with that seal. As she walked for it and opened it. As she heard a squeak as she pulled it even more. As she walked out in the hallway. Hello, she called out. But she heard her voice echo back. The place was deserted. As she rushed forward towards another room. She pushed the door open thinking that she was going to escape, but she came upon a room with nothing but pure puppets. Puppets that were mixed with humans, snakes, spider, all type of creatures, looking at her with blank eyes like she was some kind of an intruder. She slammed the door shut and rushed to her other. This one was barred shut, but there was no seal inscribed on it. As she tried to pry it open, but she couldn't. As she pulled back her hand in hands with chakra, she smashed it right through the knob, breaking it open. As she moved forward, only to have her eyes widen. As she saw a long drop, about 7 stories, before she was grabbed and pulled back as she dropped down to the floor. Her chest was panting, her eyes wide. She was about to fall from so far. As she turned to see Naruto with a bag of groceries in his hand, while another bag of groceries was on the ground. He looked at her with a hint of annoyance before stepping forward. As he looked at the door that was swinging, that she had broken. What did I say about escaping? Some of these rooms are dangerous. As another Naruto appeared and then focused on the door, while he turned back towards Hanabi. He then picked up the groceries as he turned back. What was that, she finally asked, glancing back to where the clone was. It's the big room. If I need to do something big, I do it in there. I just hollowed out a couple rooms, took out the floor and the ceiling, and reinforced the ground floor. It stretches all the way down to the second basement. She blinked. What could someone require a 7th storeroom for? But he simply changed subject as he tossed her an apple she caught on reflex, more than anything else. Eat. You've been unconscious for a few days now, he said, as he grabbed a steaming cup of ramen out of the bag. As she activated her Byakugan looking at the fruit from all different angles. As Naruto chuckled, it's not poison or anything. After all, I already have you trapped here. Why would I need to drug you as well? Fine then, Naruto says. He reached forward towards the fruit. She pulled away from him and clutched her chest as her stomach grumbled. As Naruto simply smiled. As another clone didn't appear and started to put the food away. Alright, if you need anything, just let one of my clones know and they will go get it for you. It was partly my mistake you're stuck here, so the least I can do is be a good host, right? Whatever, he said as she glared at him. You can explore the building at your leisure. I own all of it. Trust me when I say, you won't find a way to escape though. Other than that, don't bother me too much, and I can assure you, your stay here will be comfortable. Unless I figure out what to do with you in a more permanent fashion, he said. She skulked over to her futon as he returned back to his work, as she nibbled on the apple. As she broke the silence, what did you mean by a more permanent fashion? I don't know yet. I haven't figured that out. Perhaps I'll smuggle you out of the village and set you somewhere else. Different country, maybe even overseas. He could make that work with his connections, Nami. But it will be difficult to keep a track on her though. I'll just escape, she says, and bite the apple. And then I'll come back to the village and expose you. As Naruto chuckled, that is why I'm still considering it, he said. As he spun her in his chair and looked at her. Perhaps he could put her in Nami. There was plenty of people looking for a child after the atrocities that Gato committed. Plus, it's supposed to be quite beautiful now. You will never get away with it, she said, she chewed. My father will tear apart this village trying to find me. Maybe, if they thought you were still in this village, said Naruto. As she looked rather confused, making Naruto's grin grew wide. I guess you wouldn't have heard. But Kumo and Konoha are somewhat at some odds lately. Because of yours truly, he said. What do you mean, she asked. I mean that you and your cousin's kidnapping by Kumo will be just what needs to spark a war. Her eyes widened as her gaze became accusatory. But you kidnapped me, she said. As she received a raised eyebrow. Well, obviously, but the Hyuga won't see it that way. Konoha won't see it that way. And the world, they won't see it that way. I went through great lengths to do all of this. And even a little mistake of you showing up won't change that. At this point, both villages are looking for any opportunity to start battle. Regardless what their Kages think. You're a monster, she shouted, horrified to what she had heard. What her kidnap might lead to. Suddenly, Naruto was across the room faster than she thought he could be. Because of his pale skin and his weird appearance, she thought he was a rather sluggish person, but he was not. As she extended her hand as he grabbed it, holding it against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, but she could not. Use her Chayugan. Sorry, no monster here, just us humans. And just like that, he released her hand as she tumbled back, as he made his way towards his decks. But you will condemn hundreds or thousands to death, she shouted as she sat back up, her mind still trying to comprehend the madness that she was hearing. Everything she was taught about what was right or wrong, this boy, he was trampling on all of that. Hundreds or thousands of shinobis, he said. They are just as likely to die on their next mission. They know the kind of life they're in, and yet they risk it already. But why would you want this? Why would you start a war, she asked, her own mind unable to guess a good answer. Oh, because I'm selfish, he said. I want to use war to make my own name legendary, to hone my skill and my art, to be remembered. That is my immortality, he said. But that is irrelevant right now. All you need to know is that I have my reasons. But war is not without gain. Most economists boost from the aftermath. Technologies take a leap forward. The great heroes in wars are those who made their names for the future. The butchers of thousands in the past became the legend of tomorrow. Did you know it was only the first great shinobi war that had seals were everywhere? Before that, Senjus and the other clans had their own way of doing their things. But after Senjus won, things took a leap in their own way. She had knew some of this from being taught in academy history lessons. And in the second, the poison that the hidden sand pumped out forced our own Snadif Sanin to push out a lot of anti-venoms, to create new and more medicines, even build up the medical practice that we know today. Without that war back then, we wouldn't have the medicine that makes our lives so secure now. And the Kunoichi seal that prevent unwanted pregnancy out in the field, made by the fourth Hokage to counteract Kumo in the Third Great War. But you struggle to remember them, don't you? Because they're just dry old lessons taught you in a classroom. You don't need to remember them, right? Of course you don't, or neither will future generations sitting in their own classroom. Because at some point, everything will be just history. But that won't be me. I refuse just to be another history, a statistic, in a book. I'll be remembered for what I did. I'll make sure of it, he says. He stopped spinning his pen, as he then went down and started to write something. And once that was over, he went silent completely. as Hanabi just sit there. She was thinking how to escape this madman and go back to her family. Because the thing that he wanted to do, things that he wanted to cause, he would bring chaos to this world. Time skip, Naruto sighed as he opened his door slowly, rubbing his eye. He then had to duck, avoiding the strike that might have closed off a point in his neck. His finger then twitched as a nearby puppet jumped to life and grabbed Hanabi and wrapped her up. As she flashed around, but Naruto ignored as he took off his jacket and threw it towards the chair as he collapsed in it. He had neither the energy or the patience to deal with her rebellion today. The uneasy between Kumo and Konoha has finally been broken, as the front line was intense right now. Naruto had the puppet walk Hanabi over to her futon and jump in her. She picked herself up and blew the hair away from her face as her Byakugan was on full fold, as he simply made the puppet push her back down in the bed. "Give it a rest for once, will you?" he said. "Never. Not until I escape from you," she said. "When you're tired like this, then it's only a better opportunity." Well, she did not attack him, she just sit there, her arms folded across her chest. "Yeah, good luck with that. How did the escape attempt go today?" he asked, as her glare deepened. But her cheeks became red for the slightest, as she then looked away. "Oh? What was it today?" Naruto asked. "Did you try to tunnel through the walls? Or maybe the elevator shaft? Or did you try to attack one of my clones?" As she rolled her eyes. So Naruto looked around the room, as he noticed a few things were missing. As a small chuckle, he did. "Did you try to hide inside one of my puppets?" As her cheeks became red. "How exactly did that go?" he asked. As he noticed she hid her arms. His puppets had safety mechanism. When you tried to open them, there was dangerous things inside after all. "Which one?" he said. As his eyes narrowed around, a bit jovial, but then he looked at the model that he was making before Rainia. As his eyes widened, he rushed over. "Show me your hands." No trace of a tired Naruto remained. She felt compelled to show him her hands. They were poorly bandaged, making Naruto click his tongue in irritation. A shadow clone appeared, as it went forward for some bandages, as Naruto removed the bandages as he applied. "Don't mess around with the puppets, I told you that," Naruto said, as the clone came back and gave him the bandage before poofing away. Hanabi looked at him in confusion as he redid her sloppy work. He was acting like how a parent would act with a child. As he removed the bandages he placed on, looking at the wounds, as he applied something to it that sting just a bit, before he applied new bandages. He then got to his feet after bandaging her up. "You were lucky, I don't keep poisons in the spear models. Or it will be more than your hands, I will be bandaging up." As he walked off to his room, too tired to handle this right now. She just blinked as she looked towards her hands that were bandaged up. Time skip. "Hey, has anyone seen the design for the amphibious puppet?" a clone called out. As Naruto, head throb. "No, for the last time, we haven't." "Go. Try to find where a 10-year-old girl will try to hide blueprints." Hanabi has grown tired of her failed escape attempts. Well, at least for now. So she was trying to spite him in any way, form, and shape possible. That included interrupting his clones in their work, hiding various things, making mess everywhere, and also setting up a lot of traps so his clones could get dispelled. But in her presence, Naruto was calm and disinterested in what she did. But it was getting him, really annoyed. But when he showed no interest to what she was doing, it got under her skin and made her quite pissed off. As that was the only reason why he hasn't drugged her yet and put her into a long sleep. Still, it was getting irritating dealing with her childishness. But she will break before he do. She was just a young girl lashing out because of the situation that she was in. He had a goal. He had a reason. Time skip. Naruto made his way back to his workshop, his eyes narrowing all around. As he saw Hanabi sitting down, she was on her futon. Her eyes were open and she was staring at the ceiling. It was different from what she has been for the past few weeks. As he walked by and sat down, going through his paperwork. But he heard nothing. After an hour, he spun around. "So what are you plotting this time?" he said. She didn't even move, she just tilted her eyes towards him. "You play dead for a while. Force me into a false security. Maybe play on my sympathies, just for a bit." But she just continued to stare at him, no matter what he said. "Huh," she said. Its eyebrow twitched just the slightest. After all, he was in a team with Sasuke Uchiha, who was always used to that, But she had returned, looking back up the ceiling, so she didn't see what he did. She wasn't doing anything. She was just looking up at the ceiling. Decided to play it off as nothing. He just returned back to his work. Time skip. This is the phase that she has put herself in. Well, it was rather better than the other ones. She wouldn't try to hurt herself or do anything stupid. And he could focus on his work right now without being interrupted or his clones be dispelled or any pranks. It was so pleasant that he decided to take a trip outside for once, since by now the entire complex that he lived in. He had little use for training grounds because He now had a giant training ground in the complex. As he made his way through the streets of Konoha, it had become a very different place since the advent of war with Kumo. The buzz that was always in the street had died down, and there was also a thick tension that was there. As he made his way towards a training field, as he could hear the thuds, something being hit very hard. As he made his way towards the training field, he was surprised. Hinata? This was not the timid girl that he always came upon. True, he had not seen her for a while because of their responsibilities, being tuning and all. But this Hinata was different from the awkward and manipulating one that he had seen a couple months ago. Her hands were inflamed with chocolate to destroy the log in front of her. Ah, Naruto, she greeted. The bubbling anger that she had faded away as she put on a tired smile, no longer looking nervous at him. It's been a while, he said. She nodded. My new responsibilities have been keeping me busy, and father has increased my training since. As her lip then quivered, she couldn't say since what. Suddenly Naruto saw her broke down as she collapsed and she started to cry. Her face were buried in her hands as he tried to wipe away the tears. As he moved forward and placed a hand on her shoulder, unsure what else to do, she latched onto his hand immediately, still crying. After a while, she reined herself in. As she looked up, I'm sorry about that, Naruto, but thank you, she said, as he nodded. I just don't know what to do anymore. I feel so angry at Kumo for stealing Neji and Hanabi-chan, and father for acting like nothing is wrong. At the same time, I'm expected to show nothing, be the perfect, emotionless doll that I'm expected to be. They keep me so busy, train me so hard, that I never got the chance to cry. If they ever saw me this way, they would call me weak. But if I can't even cry in my own family, then what am I supposed to do? As Naruto looked down at her, he was the cause and reason behind all of this. And then he had Hanabi locked up away, and she was also now emotionless and blank. As he sighed. But guys, be in the episode right here. For the next part, if you already know what to do, like, subscribe, comment down below, and turn the bell notifications to be posted. But I'm off for now. See you guys soon. Peace.